Wen Yan thought he was simply following Hong Er to a hidden courtyard in the woods, but almost immediately, something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet. No bird calls, no rustling branches, nothing except the crack of dead leaves underfoot, and the sound of his own breathing growing louder in the stillness. The place did not feel dangerous. Somehow that made it worse. It felt removed, as if ordinary rules had stopped applying the moment he stepped inside. Then Honger took his hand, calmly, naturally, as though Wen Yan's fear had already been noticed, and he said softly, "Do not be afraid. I brought you here. I will not let you lose your way." Instead, it made Wen Yan realize just how far he had already followed without question. By the time the hidden courtyard appeared beyond its crooked gate and vine-covered wall, Wen Yan already knew this was no ordinary place. In Luzhou, there lived a young gentleman of the Wen family, known less for brilliance than for his silence. He had no taste for wine, no interest in gaming houses, and no talent for conversation. Words deserted him whenever more than two people stood before him. Invitations embarrassed him. Banquets exhausted him. If he went out, it was only because duty forced him. If he remained home, it was because silence did not demand anything of him. His only constant devotion was pigeons. He had learned the craft from his maternal grandfather, who once placed a small ash-grey bird into his childish hands, and said, "They return only to where the heart is steady." From that day forward, Wen Yan raised pigeons with a seriousness that bordered on reverence. He studied the classic of pigeons until he could recite passages from memory. He sought rare breeds in neighboring counties, bargaining stubbornly for colors no one else prized. He fed them licorice powder when the weather turned cold, sprinkled grains of salt during summer heat, and monitored their sleep so they would not grow sluggish and fall ill. He knew each one as if it were kin, which bird disliked being handled, which startled at shadows, which preferred the western perch at dusk. Among pigeon keepers in the region, his name came to be quietly respected. In that quiet respect, something inside him straightened, perhaps even grew proud. He once heard of a peculiar breed in Suzhou, a small-bodied, restless pigeon that once set on the ground would circle endlessly unless restrained. Such birds, the keeper said, could keep an entire flock active through the night and prevent illness born of stillness. He traveled far to purchase one, paying 10 taels of silver, an excessive sum for a creature so slight. The bird was indeed tireless. When placed on the ground, it paced in spirals, never stopping until lifted. At night he released it among the flock, and its restless wandering stirred the others from lethargy. Wen Yan named it Night Wanderer. When it perched in his palm, its pulse felt quick, alive. He found comfort in that. One afternoon, while reading alone in his study, Yin Yan heard an unusual surge of wings from the dovecote. He frowned. Night Wanderer had not yet been released, and during daylight the bird seldom stirred unless disturbed. He rose and went out. As he approached the dovecote door, he saw through the half-open frame a young man in white standing among the pigeons. The stranger was speaking softly, not chanting, not commanding, but simply conversing. The pigeons were not startled. They moved freely around him, heads tilting, wings rustling softly. A few hopped close enough to peck at the hem of his robe, as if they had known him all their lives. Wen Yan's irritation rose. How had someone entered his estate? But just as quickly it dissolved. The white-robed young man's voice was low and warm, the kind of voice that did not demand replies. The pigeons leaned toward it, as though toward sunlight. Wen Yan cleared his throat. This young man turned. He was unfamiliar, slender, pale, his white robe unadorned. His features were refined without softness, and his eyes held a clarity Wen Yan had never seen in any official's son. He smiled, not boldly, but as if he had simply been waiting for Wen Yan to arrive. "Who are you?" Wen Yan managed. His gaze drifted over Wen Yan's shoulder, toward the dovecote, toward the careful order of perches and bowls and straw nests. I travel, he said. A name is useful only to those who intend to keep it, but you may call me Hong-er. Wen-Yan had meant to demand how he had entered. Instead, he found himself unable to form a single sharp word. Hong-er inclined his head toward the birds. I heard the pigeons of the Wen-Yan household were treated like children, he said. I wished to see whether the rumor was exaggerated. Wen-Yan felt heat rise in his face. They are well cared for, he said defensively. I see that. Hong-er's eyes moved from bird to bird, attentive, almost affectionate. May I see them more closely? He asked, as if it were the most natural request in the world. Wen-Yan hesitated, then began introducing them, one by one, as though Hong-er's presence had quietly turned the dovecote into a hall where introductions mattered. Colours shimmered in the afternoon light, russet, silver, violet-tinted, snow-white, with crimson eyes. Wen-Yan described each bird's temperament, lineage, and habits. He spoke far more than he ever spoke to people. Hong-er listened without interruption, not politely, but with real attention. For the first time, Wen-Yan felt what it was to speak and be wholly received. The relief of it was so sharp it almost frightened him. When he finished, Hong-er said quietly, You remember them the way others remember family. Wen-Yan's throat tightened. He glanced away, pretending to adjust a bowl of grain. If one keeps them, one should know them. Hong-er's smile softened, as if he understood what Wen-Yan could not say. I keep a few of my own, he added. He glanced toward the woods beyond the estate walls. If you'd like to see them, my dwelling is some distance from here. It would be difficult to arrive before nightfall. Wen-Yan did not think. Stay, he said quickly. There is a guest room. Hong-er regarded him a moment longer than necessary. Then he nodded. That evening, after supper, Wen-Yan carried Night Wanderer toward the dovecote and saw Hong-er seated in the garden, grain scattered softly from his hand. The pigeons circled him without fear. There was nothing showy in it. He seemed merely at ease among them. Lantern light touched his cheekbone and faded. Wen-Yan found himself sitting beside him without quite remembering when he had decided to do so. Hong-er glanced at Night Wanderer in its cage. That one is restless, he said. It never stops moving, Wen-Yan replied. If released, it might not return. Let me try. Wen-Yan hesitated. The thought of losing Night Wanderer was like losing the one creature that had kept his flock healthy. And more than that, losing proof that his care truly mattered. But Hong-er held out his hand calmly, palm up, as if he were not asking permission, so much as offering certainty. Wen-Yan handed him the cage. Night Wanderer stepped onto Hong-er's wrist. It did not flee. It did not circle. It settled, still as a stone warmed by the sun. Wen-Yan stared. Hong-er's eyes flicked toward him, faintly amused. It only looks restless, he said softly. Some creatures move because no one has ever asked them to stop. Something in Wen-Yan's chest tightened, and he did not know why. He laughed once under his breath, half in disbelief. It came to him, with a trace of embarrassment, that he had begun to follow Hong-er's steadiness, much as the birds did. Hong-er scattered more grain, and pigeons came running, their small feet tapping like rain. Wen-Yan found himself doing the same. They fed them side by side. Their hands did not touch, yet the narrow space between their sleeves seemed quietly charged. Hong-er said nothing, yet for the first time in years, Wen-Yan felt he was not alone in silence. The next morning Hong-er said, Come, I will show you mine. He said it lightly, almost casually, as if offering nothing more than a change of scenery. Wen-Yan's heart lifted so sharply it startled him. He turned away at once, pretending to adjust his sleeve, annoyed by the sudden quickening in his chest. It felt foolish to be so pleased by so simple an invitation. They took a carriage as far as the driver dared. The road, broad and harmless at first, gradually narrowed, bending inward as though the trees themselves leaned closer to watch them pass. Sunlight thinned as it filtered through layers of leaves until what remained felt strained and pale. Wen-Yan sat opposite Hong-Er inside the carriage. When the road grew uneven, their knees nearly touched. Once, when a wheel struck stone, Wen-Yan's hand shifted forward to steady himself and brushed briefly against Hong-Er's sleeve. He withdrew at once. Hong-Er did not. He only looked at him and smiled faintly, as though such nearness required no apology. At last the driver pulled the reins tight. "I go no further," he said, glancing uneasily at the darkening trees. "The path ahead is rough. No households beyond this point. Only woods." Wen-Yan hesitated. Hong-Er stepped down from the carriage without pause, as if he had returned to a familiar courtyard rather than entered somewhere remote. Wen-Yan followed. Dry leaves crackled beneath their feet, louder than they should have been in the stillness. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No bird calls broke the air. After a while, Wen-Yan became aware of his own breathing, the faint rasp of it in the hush, and tried to quiet it, as though the place might take offense at human sound. Hong-Er walked beside him, unhurried, his steps measured and certain. He did not look back to see whether Wen-Yan kept pace. He seemed confident that he would. Wen-Yan's excitement began to wrestle with something else, a creeping tension in his chest. The place did not feel dangerous, only removed, as though ordinary consequence had little hold there. He told himself he was being foolish. Hong-Er had shown no malice. Anyone might live quietly in the woods. He had seen stranger things. Still, his hands tightened inside his sleeves. Perhaps sensing the change, Hong-Er glanced at him. He did not smile this time. Without preface, he reached over and took Wen-Yan's hand. Not briefly, not playfully. He simply held it. Wen-Yan's steps faltered. Hong-Er's palm was warm and steady, warmer than Wen-Yan had expected in the coolness beneath the trees. His grip did not restrain or pull. It merely enclosed. The forest did not change. The quiet remained, but the unease in Wen-Yan's chest loosened, as if a cord drawn too tight had been gently eased. "You're thinking too much," Hong-Er said softly, still looking ahead. Wen-Yan attempted to protest, but could not form the words. Hong-Er's thumb pressed once, faintly, against the back of his hand, a small grounding pressure. "I brought you here," he added. "I will not let you lose your way." The simplicity of it struck Wen-Yan harder than reassurance should have. He did not notice when Hong-Er released him, only that his hand felt abruptly colder without the contact. A rueful awareness rose in him then, almost painfully. He too had followed without question. The forest gradually thinned, as though reluctant to reveal what it had kept hidden. Light returned in narrow bands, sliding across moss-covered stones. The air felt cooler than it should have for late summer. Not unpleasant, simply other. Then the courtyard appeared. It did not announce itself with structure or symmetry. It gathered slowly out of shadow, a low wall half covered in creeping vines, a wooden gate that leaned inward as if accustomed to yielding without resistance. From within came the soft murmur of cooing. Not loud, not restless, but like breath shared among many small living bodies. Hong-Er pushed the gate open without knocking. Inside, the pigeons did not scatter. They turned. That was all. They turned their heads toward him, as though recognizing something older than scent. Wen-Yan remained at the threshold longer than he intended. There were fewer birds here than in his own dovecote, but each seemed composed differently. Their feathers did not flash or glitter. They absorbed light, holding it close. Even their movements were deliberate, measured, almost thoughtful. Hong-Er stepped forward and spoke softly, not in words Wen-Yan could clearly distinguish, but in tones that seemed to settle into the air itself. The pigeons gathered, not urgently, not eagerly, but simply because they belonged near him. Something tightened in Wen-Yan's chest. It was not envy exactly, nor admiration alone, but something more vulnerable. The sense that he was witnessing a kind of trust he had spent his life studying, yet had never quite earned. "Will they Accept me? Wen Yan asked, the question escaping before pride could stop it. Hong-er turned and regarded him carefully. They do not choose lightly, he said. Wen Yan stepped forward anyway. He extended his hand. A single pigeon hopped onto his palm. Its feet were warm. Its weight was almost nothing. Its heartbeat trembled faintly against his skin. For a long moment it remained. Wen Yan scarcely breathed. Then, as though reconsidering, the bird stepped lightly back to Hong-er's sleeve. Hong-er pretended not to notice the way Wen Yan's fingers curled slightly after it left. Instead, he said quietly, "It will come again." He did not specify whether he meant the pigeon. That evening, as the light thinned to silver and shadows lengthened along the stone steps, they sat side by side. Hong-er poured grain into his palm. After a small pause, long enough to be deliberate, he tipped half into Wen Yan's hand. The gesture was unceremonious, yet Wen Yan felt it settle inside him like something heavier than grain. The pigeons moved between them freely, stepping from one hand to the other and pecking at shared kernels. Once, a bird balanced, with one foot in each palm, before choosing neither and fluttering briefly upward. Their sleeves brushed, and neither moved away. The courtyard was quiet, but not empty. For the first time in years, Wen Yan did not feel the need to justify his presence with words. Wen Yan meant to stay one night. He stayed many. In the mornings, Hong-er led him to a wider backyard, where low pigeon houses lined a stone wall and small bamboo cages hung beneath the eaves. Sunlight slid across feathers like water. Pigeons rose and fell in coordinated circles, landing in unison on Hong-er's shoulder, his wrist, the edge of his robe. Wen Yan watched, open-mouthed. "These recognize steadiness," Hong-er said lightly, as if discussing the weather. "They do not choose a master by rank or coin. They choose by steadiness." Yin Yan extended his hand. A few birds landed, briefly, then returned to Hong-er. It should not have mattered, yet something tightened in Wen Yan's chest, sharp and inexplicable, as if he had been quietly refused. Hong-er pretended not to notice. Later, at feeding time, he divided a handful of grain and placed half into Wen Yan's palm. The gesture was small, but it carried weight. Wen Yan held the grain as though it were a confession he did not know how to answer. At night they sat on the stone steps, lamplight trembling in the courtyard. Beyond the wall, the forest pressed close, dark and vast, but the yard felt held, enclosed, warm. Hong-er spoke of pigeon temperaments, of how birds recognize sincerity, of how some creatures could live a lifetime without ever being truly seen. Wen Yan listened until his chest went quiet. He remembered his study in Juzhou, how empty it had sounded, how hollow the silence there had once seemed. This silence was not hollow, it was full. On the third day he meant to mention returning. The words reached his lips, then turned back. Hong-er did not ask him to stay, did not plead, did not tempt him with promises. He simply fed the birds, divided the grain, and sat beside Wen Yan in the night, as if Wen Yan belonged there. And Wen Yan, who had never been chosen by anyone in his life, began to understand that he had been. One evening, after the pigeons had settled and the lamp had burned low, Wen Yan finally asked, his voice barely above the cooing, "What are you?" Hong-er's eyes turned toward him slowly. For a moment Wen Yan thought he would laugh. Instead, Hong-er said quietly, "You already know." Wen Yan's mouth opened. No sound came. Hong-er reached out, and a pale pigeon hopped onto his finger as if summoned by thought. It nestled there, unafraid. Hong-er's gaze returned to Wen Yan. "If I say it plainly," he said, "will you fear me?" Wen Yan surprised himself. No. Hong-er's lashes lowered a fraction, as if something in him had softened at that answer. "I am from a place that is not your place," he said. "I belong to the air more than to the ground. When I heard there was a man in Zhu County who fed pigeons like children and spoke of them as though they too had souls, I wanted to see if such a man truly existed. Wen Yan's throat tightened painfully. And does he? Honger held his gaze. He does. The words landed in Wen Yan like warmth in winter. His hand tightened on the stone step. He could not have named what rose in him, gratitude, longing, shame, and a tenderness he had never learned how to express. He said only, "Then stay." Honger smiled faintly, not joyful, not teasing, but something more private. "For now," he said. On the third night, Wen Yan woke before dawn. The sky above the courtyard was a dim wash of blue, not yet morning. He could not say what had disturbed him, so he stepped outside. Honger was already seated beneath the eaves. A pale pigeon rested against his shoulder, its head tucked into its wing. "You rise early," Wen Yan said quietly. Honger did not turn immediately. "Some of us do not sleep as heavily as humans." Wen Yan hesitated. The word humans lingered between them. After a moment he asked, "When you return to the capital, how long will you remain there?" Honger stroked the pigeon's neck. "As long as I must." "And then?" "And then," he said softly, "I will see." Wen Yan stood there, uncertain why the answer unsettled him. "If you remained," Wen Yan began, and stopped. Honger looked at him now. "If I remained?" he prompted. Wen Yan swallowed. "This place would not object." Honger studied him carefully. "Would you keep me?" he asked. The question was gentle, not teasing. Wen Yan's hands tightened inside his sleeves. "If you let me," he said at last. Honger's gaze flickered. Something like warmth, something like warning. "Is that the same thing?" he asked quietly. The sky lightened. Neither answered. Honger left for the capital in early autumn. The sky was thin, the light pale as if the season had already begun to withdraw. He offered no explanation. He only said, "I will return in 1 month." Wen Yan wanted to escort him out of the forest. Honger shook his head. "Do not," he said. "If you walk too far with me, you will not want to go back." Wen Yan stiffened. His face warmed. Honger's gaze moved away, as if giving him dignity by pretending not to see. Before leaving, Honger placed 2 pigeons into a bamboo cage, one black, one ash grey, sleek and bright-eyed. "They are mine," he said. "I raised them myself." Wen Yan's hands tightened around the cage as though around something living and fragile. "If you miss me," Honger added quietly, "speak to them." Wen Yan nodded once, too stiffly. Honger stepped into the trees. After only a few paces, he seemed to thin into the forest shadows, not disappearing like smoke, not vanishing dramatically, simply no longer there, as though the woods had folded him away. Wen Yan stood with the cage in both hands for a long time, staring at the place where the white robe had been. Then he returned to Zhu County. The world became, all at once, too large and too empty. He fed the 2 pigeons every morning. They were obedient, came at a single call, and perched on his wrist without struggle. Their bodies were warm. At night Wen Yan sat beneath his lamp and stroked their feathers, and sometimes he spoke, not to the birds, not truly, but to the empty space that had once held a voice. He said things he had never said to another person, not dramatic statements, small, foolish things. Today the market sold bad millet. The weather has turned. I remembered how you divided the grain. I did not know a quiet place could feel like home. Often he stopped mid-sentence, realizing he did not even know to whom he was speaking. The month passed. No one came. Half a month later, a new assistant magistrate's clerk arrived in the county, a man of minor office but conspicuous appetite. He had the air of someone who had long practiced appearing genial while measuring profit in every glance. Word travelled quickly in small places. Before long he had heard that the Wen Yan household kept the finest pigeons in the region. He arrived one afternoon under the polite pretense of admiration. The courtyard had been freshly swept. The dovecote stood in orderly rows. Sunlight caught on layered feathers. The clerk smiled broadly. "Ah," he said, clasping his hands behind his back as he walked slowly along the cages. "So the stories are true." His eyes did not rest on the birds the way a fancier's might. They moved instead the way a merchant's would, assessing, calculating, comparing value. "Such discipline," he murmured. "Such harmony. Young Master Wenyan, you must be very proud." Wenyan inclined his head. "I do what I can." The clerk paused beside him. His gaze drifted, unhurried, until it settled on the bamboo cage hanging near Wenyan's hand. "I hear," the clerk continued lightly, "that you recently acquired 2 birds, so responsive, they come at a whisper." The words were casual. Wenyan felt his throat tighten all the same. "I keep many good birds," he replied carefully. "If you are thinking of beginning a loft of your own, I could assist you in selecting." The clerk laughed softly, not unkindly. "I do not wish to begin," he said. "I wish to borrow." The word landed gently between them. "Those 2, he added, nodding toward the cage. Wenyan's fingers tightened around the thin bamboo handle. "They are not precisely mine," he said. The clerk's smile did not falter. "They reside in your house." There was no accusation in his tone, no raised voice, only fact. Wenyan felt the air shift. He had endured loneliness. He had endured small humiliations. He had endured the slow ache of being overlooked, but he had never learned how to withstand direct pressure. He searched for the correct form of refusal, something polite, something that would not cause offense, and found none. The clerk stepped closer, lowering his voice only slightly. "Do not misunderstand me," he said smoothly. "I admire your taste. I wish merely to enjoy it for an evening. I am hosting several gentlemen tonight. They appreciate refinement." His eyes sharpened, though his mouth still smiled. "It would be regrettable," he added, "if such refinement were mistaken for selfishness." The implication hovered there, delicate as silk, sharp as wire. Wenyan felt heat rise beneath his collar. "It is one night," he told himself. "One night cannot undo trust." He imagined dawn. He imagined arriving at the clerk's gate early, composed, requesting the bird's return before anyone else stirred. He imagined explaining. "I was cornered. It was temporary. I meant no harm." He told himself that endurance was strength. He told himself that flexibility was wisdom. He told himself that peace was preferable to pride. Inside the cage, the 2 pigeons shifted closer together. One leaned forward, head tilted, its small dark eye resting on him without suspicion. The sight struck him harder than any threat. He could say no. He could let the clerk's pleasant mask fall. He could endure the discomfort of disapproval. He imagined it, the slight narrowing of the clerk's eyes, the cool withdrawal of favor, the 1,000 small inconveniences that follow men who fail to comply. Paperwork delayed, permits reconsidered, requests forgotten. He had never been a man built for friction. The clerk waited. He did not repeat himself. He did not need to. Wenyan's grip on the cage tightened until the bamboo creaked faintly under the pressure. Trust is not so fragile, he told himself. They would come to no harm. Hong-er would understand. He is reasonable. He is calm. He would not mistake necessity for betrayal. The word betrayal entered his mind unbidden. He pushed it away. "It is only for tonight," the clerk said gently, as though easing a child. The afternoon sun had shifted. Shadows lengthened across the courtyard floor. Wenyan swallowed. His hands moved before his resolve did. He lifted the cage. He told himself it was practicality, nothing more. He did not notice that his heart was already bending. He did not bring the pigeons out at once. He stalled, offered other birds. But the clerk's eyes remained fixed. In the end, Wen Yan signaled to a servant. The 2 pigeons were brought. They did not struggle. They hopped to Wen Yan's wrist, feathers sleek, eyes bright. Wen Yan's throat moved. He wanted to say, "These do not belong to you. These are not for your hands. These are not food." What came out instead was a thin, polite sentence. "Handle them carefully." The clerk laughed. Of course. Wen Yan watched the cage leave his courtyard. That night he did not sleep. He kept telling himself, "It is only one night. Tomorrow I will retrieve them. I will pay. I will beg. I will do whatever is necessary." In the morning he went early. He was told the clerk was still asleep. He waited. By midday a servant finally emerged, embarrassed. "Last night there was a banquet," the man said, not meeting Wen Yan's eyes. "Several gentlemen admired the birds. They asked for them." Wen Yan frowned, not understanding. The servant's voice dropped. "They were killed, cooked." For a moment Wen Yan could not breathe. He said very softly, as though testing whether language still had meaning, "As food?" The servant nodded. Wen Yan stood there. He did not shout. He did not strike the gate. He stared at the wooden door for a long time, as though expecting it to open and reveal a different reality. Then he turned and walked away. His steps were steady. Inside, something in him had broken without sound. That evening, the dovecote erupted. Dozens of pigeons beat their wings at once, the sound like sudden rain striking a roof in the dead of night. They spiraled wildly, colliding with one another, refusing to settle no matter how sharply Wen Yan called their names. He ran in beneath them, his heart pounding so hard it blurred his sight. He knew before he saw anything. The air was different. The courtyard felt held, as if something had stepped into it and drawn all sound inward. The gate opened without a knock. The white-robed Hong-er stood there. He was not disheveled, not wild, not raging. His robe fell as cleanly as ever. His expression was composed. That composure frightened Wen Yan more than fury would have. Wen Yan stepped forward, words rising in his throat all at once, tripping over each other in their urgency. But Hong-er spoke first. "The 2, he said. "Where are they?" His voice was quiet. It did not demand or accuse. It only asked. Wen Yan opened his mouth. Nothing came. Hong-er did not blink. Above them the pigeons wheeled and wheeled, their wings beating the air into restless currents that stirred his white sleeve. After a long moment, Hong-er said, almost gently, "I know you did not kill them with your own hand." Relief flooded Wen Yan so violently his knees nearly buckled. He seized on that small mercy as though it were a rescue. Then Hong-er added very softly, "But you lent them." The sentence was not louder than the wind, yet it seemed to strike the ground and remain there. Wind moved through the courtyard. Feathers trembled on their perches. Wen Yan's voice cracked apart. I thought I could retrieve them at dawn. I thought it would be one night. I thought—" "You thought?" Hong-er repeated. This time the words carried weight. Not mockery, not sarcasm, but something heavier, like the slow closing of a door. Wen Yan stepped closer, desperate now, his hands trembling. "It was pressure," he said. "He threatened. It was only for a banquet. I meant to bring them back before harm." Hong-er's gaze did not harden. It softened. That softness cut deeper. "You always mean to bring things back before harm," he said. Wen Yan stilled. Hong-er's breath trembled once, barely visibly. "They trusted you," he continued, "because I placed them in your hand." Wen Yan's fingers twitched, as if they still held the bamboo cage. "I did not believe—" "No," Hong-er said. The word broke, not loudly, but enough that Wen Yan heard something beneath it. "You did not believe anything would truly be taken from you." The courtyard seemed to tilt. Wen Yan reached for Hong-er's sleeve. Hong-er stepped back. It was a small movement, precise and clean, more devastating than a blow. "It wasn't intentional," Wen-Yan whispered hoarsely. I would never knowingly." Hong-Er's mouth curved faintly, but it was not a smile. "You have never knowingly chosen loss," he said. "You have only avoided discomfort." Each word landed separately. "You would not endure displeasure for them." Wen-Yan flinched. "You would not endure danger." He drew another breath. "You would not endure me." That last line did not rise. It fell, and Wen-Yan felt something inside his chest split open. He began speaking faster, as if speed alone might reverse time. "I will never lend again. I will refuse anyone. I will go to the capital and petition. I will sell everything if I must. I will—" Hong-Er listened, the same way he had once listened to descriptions of feather colors and temperaments. Patiently, attentively. Only now that patience contained distance. When Wen-Yan's words finally collapsed into silence, the wind was the only thing moving. Hong-Er lifted his eyes. There was grief in them, and beneath it something absolute. Acceptance. He inhaled once, steadying himself. Then, without raising his voice, he recited, "I thought your heart was steadfast. Now I see it bends. Today we share 1 cup of wine. Tomorrow at the canal's head, water will flow east and west, and never meet again." The verses did not echo. They settled like something irrevocable. Wen-Yan knew the poem. Every scholar did. But here, in this courtyard, in that mouth, it was no longer literature. It was judgment. "I believed," Hong-Er said quietly, "that you were not ruled by habit. I believed that when the moment came, you would choose." Wen-Yan shook his head violently, tears rising too late. "I am choosing now," he said, though even he heard the hollowness in it. Hong-Er's eyes closed briefly. "When it cost nothing," he replied. The pigeons above them beat their wings once more, then stilled. "You are human," Hong-Er said at last, "and human habit is heavier than human longing." He turned. Wen-Yan lunged forward, panic tearing through him now. His fingers closed on the edge of the white sleeve and passed through it. There was no resistance, no fabric, no warmth. It was as though he had tried to grasp mist. Hong-Er was already receding, not walking, but thinning, as if the night itself had claimed him. "Wait," Wen-Yan gasped. I did not know how." Hong-Er did not look back. The gate stood open. Then it stood empty. All at once the dovecote fell silent. The pigeons stopped beating their wings. The air felt hollow. Wen-Yan stumbled into the dovecote. Empty. No cooing, no flutter. No small shifting sounds of life. Only drifting feathers on the floor, turning slowly in the current like snow after slaughter. He sank to his knees. He did not cry out. He did not weep. He only pressed his palms to the ground where the birds had stood, and felt nothing there. For days Wen-Yan did not leave his room. Meals arrived, cooled, and were removed untouched. His parents asked questions. He did not answer. When someone mentioned buying new pigeons, he lowered his head as though ashamed of his own existence. Weeks passed, then months. One morning, he lifted his gaze and saw a strand of white hair at his mother's temple. The sight pierced him. He rose, washed, and stepped outside. Life indifferent continued. That evening, a servant came running, shouting, "Young master, a pigeon has returned." Wen-Yan's heart lurched so hard he almost fell. He walked fast, too fast, to the dovecote. On the beam above the perch sat a small bird, eyes bright, body lean, night wanderer. It hopped down and landed on Wen-Yan's palm as if nothing had happened. Wen-Yan's hand trembled. His knees buckled. He sank to the ground with the bird warm and living in his grasp. Tears finally fell, not loud weeping, only quiet, unstoppable tears that tasted of regret. For 1 week, he cared for Night Wanderer himself. Food, water, clean straw. He watched the courtyard gate every dusk. No one came. 2 weeks later, a pale yellow pigeon landed on his roof beam, his first prize bird, the one that had once made him proud. He whispered, "It's good you're back." Another fortnight, a lavender-tinted bird circled and returned to its old corner. Then another. Then another. Little shadows of his former life returning as if to rebuild what was ruined. Wen-Yan stood beneath them and felt, more clearly than ever, the hollow they could not fill. They returned. But the one who had made returning mean something did not. One night, long after the courtyard had settled, Wen-Yan sat alone beneath the lamp, Night Wanderer perched on his wrist, still as a stone. Wen-Yan stroked its feathers and spoke softly, almost without meaning to. "I would not lend you," he whispered. "Not for rank, not for fear, not for anything." The pigeon blinked. Wen-Yan's throat tightened. He sat there until the lamp burned low.